been walking around the block and looked at a newer building and thought, I wonder what used to be there? Well, you may be able to find out thanks to a very unique and maybe unlikely source, fire insurance companies. Back in the late 19th and early 20th century, the Sanborn Map Company of New York produced extremely detailed fire insurance maps of cities throughout the country, with the purpose of helping fire insurance companies assess rates to charge their customers. Lots of wooden buildings together would have higher rates than brick or stone buildings. Luckily for us, these maps now form small time capsules to help show us what our blocks look like in days of yore. Today we're going to look at how you can access some of these Sanborn maps for free and how to read them so that you can really understand what you're seeing. Let's get started. Today we will focus on this block, starting at the northeast corner of Chemeketa and Liberty Streets, where the Salem Center stands today. Let's see what was there in 1895. The Library of Congress has the Salem Sanborn Map from 1895, free and online and in color. These maps were originally published in large books. The company would send out stickers each year for the book owners to paste in, showing any new buildings or changes in the maps that they had originally sent out. The update log, so let's look real quick here at the index page. The update log, which you will find in these maps on this index page, will help tell you how up to date the map is. No dates, as this one shows, should indicate that this book looks like what it did when it was published. Compare that to the same version of this 1895 map that the Willamette Heritage Center has in its collections today. You can see from this map that it was updated through 1915. So even though they're the same books, basically, they'll show different time periods for what this block looked like over time. We're going to use this index map to help us identify the page that we want to look at in the large book, or in this case, on the digital version. So let's navigate down here to the northeast corner of Chemeketa and Liberty Streets. So if we're looking here, here's Liberty, and here's the intersection of Chemeketa and Liberty. Because we're interested in this block that stands on the northeast corner of that intersection, we're going to go to page 10 in the map. So I'm going to just skip back here to the back page and look at all these pages again. And we're going to go down to page 10. Again, we're going to utilize where we know we're looking for. Oops. Now, isn't this interesting? This says that it's supposed to show the corner of Liberty and Chemeketa Streets, but this isn't actually page 10. This is actually page 9. So it's really good idea to make sure that you're looking at the map itself, not just the page numbers in the digitized version. So since we know that we're there, let's go ahead and skip one more page over to page 10, which is actually image 11. And now we should be able to see right there, there's Liberty Street and Chemeketa Street. So let's zoom in and see what we can see on that block. So one of the great things about having these maps in color is that there's an actual color code to help you understand what the types of buildings are that you're looking at. So as we can see, these buildings are yellow, and yellow indicates a wooden structure. So we know that when we were looking at that corner, that we're looking at a bunch of pretty spread out yellow buildings. There's some other codes you should know about too. In this map, D stands for dwelling or a house. So instead of a store or something else that might show up, we're looking at a bunch of houses that used to sit on this block, including a house here, which if you come back and look in the back has this really cool word that says corral. Isn't that interesting to think about? This house has a corral and presumably some kind of a barn or shed or stable maybe for horses adjacent to the corral there. We can look too and see, get an idea of kind of the shape of these houses. The little number here is going to indicate how many stories the building is. So in this case, this house is a 2-story building with, in the back, a 1-story structure towards the back. Similarly, this area here with these really cool bump out, probably bay windows, it's going to be 2 stories here with a 1-story portion here on the back. As we go through and we look around up at the top, which would be the most northeast corner of this block, or where we're at its center and Liberty Streets, we've got a church, a congregational church here with a spire. Because this is not a private building, there's a little bit more detail often given to these commercial buildings because there's going to be a different, again, remember this is fire insurance maps, a different information about the heating system and other things that might help the fire insurance adjusters kind of determine the rate that you're going to be wanting to charge these folks, since it's more of a public space than a private space. So we can see here that the congregational church is heated by stoves and that it is 20 feet from the floor to the eaves on this front part and 18 feet to the eaves on this back part here. So we come around, touring around the block. It looks like we have some more houses up here. This one, interestingly enough, has a windmill, and WT could mean wind turbine. I don't really know. We can go back up to that front page and see if there's an indicator, and we'll do that in just a second, on what those symbols might mean and those abbreviations might mean. Notice that there's a house here, and then this one is labeled as board and lodging, maybe some kind of a boarding house rather than an individual family dwelling. We come down here too, and we notice that this house has a wash house adjacent to it with a kettle, and that pink is really interesting. That pink tends to indicate that that part of the structure is actually made from brick. Pink tends to be brick, and blue tends to indicate another material like stone or iron. So another indication of what was here on there. And then I like this, a little indication here too with a dotted line, which usually means that it's not solid walls, it's some kind of shed or porch. You can see that here on the house too. There's a dotted line up here to indicate a porch and a porch. But this one's labeled as arbor. Imagine grapes or roses or something growing back over there. So this building looks a lot, or this block looks a lot different than it did, than it does today. If we go to the south really quick, I want to just show you that this looks a little different here too. This is what pink looks like, and what a commercial building might look like too. So this is the City Hall. You'll notice that it's pink. It's got a lot more detail about what's going on, like the fire engine house, sleeping rooms, and other things on the second floor, the jailhouse and the council room on the second floor, a vault. But the pink indicates that it is a brick structure. Really quick, let's run back and look at that index page and kind of give you a little hint on how to impress your friends and amaze others. From that index page, the other really important part is this key here. So if you're seeing a symbol or something you don't recognize, I always recommend going back here and checking it out and seeing what we can find. Notice that cross piece that we saw on the block next to the corral, the building next to the corral, indicates stable. So we weren't too far off thinking that that was probably what the use of that building was. Other things that you often see, we'll see on buildings indicated, will be this big S, which is a device to indicate a store. You can see squares indicate skylights. If there's a brick wall on the first, you might have a solid line. Some information about what type of roof the structure has. X means shingle, darkened dot means composition, and a hollow dot means a slate or tin roof. So again, other interesting facts that we can kind of piece together. So even if you don't have a picture of what the buildings look like there, you can also get an idea or a feel for what used to be there. Definitely looks a lot different. For folks that have a Salem Public Library card and want to see even more versions of these Sanborn maps and even more time capsules to give you an idea of what a block looks like, you can go to the City of Salem Public Library webpage to get access to even more Sanborn maps. So once you're on the library page here, you're going to want to scroll down to the Research Resources page. Click on there, and we're going to select Library Online Resources. Click there. Scroll down. You're going to want to open up the A to Z resource list. Scroll down again until you get to the Sanborn Maps, which I'm a little too far, forgive me. Click on that, and it should open up a login page. This is really easy. You're just going to enter in your library card number and then your PIN, which we will do here. And this is going to give you access not only to Salem Sanborn Maps, but to all the Sanborn maps within the state of Oregon, which is really great resources. So you're going to click into the site, you're going to select your state, you'll have one option, Oregon. And then it should allow you to select a city. Since we're interested in that block in Salem, we'll type in Salem. And then here we get to select the date. Again, I will caution you to definitely use this to get the approximate date, but always check that index page at the front to make sure you're looking at what you think you're looking at. So we've already looked at the 1895. Let's pull up the 1926, 1927 and see how much the block has changed in that intervening amount of years. So as you can see here, the later we go in time, the more pages these books accumulated as the city grew. So again, we're going to want to go to that index sheet, that key sheet here. Click on there. And this should look very familiar. We've got that corrections page to give you some more information about that. You've got your symbols page here, and symbols do change as these books progress over time, so always make sure you're checking back in. You'll notice the one key difference between the Library of Congress maps and the ones in this database are the lack of color. So you do lose a little bit of information there, but you still get those outlines and symbols and can kind of get some good information about what's going on. So let's zoom into the city here. Again, we're looking for Liberty and Chemeketa streets. Right, here's Liberty, there's Chemeketa Street. And I think we're going to be wanting to look at the block here, so that's going to be on page 110. So I can come back out, and from this interface, we can actually, oh, nope, can't, just kidding. So 110 is the map I'm interested in, 110. Just to make sure that I'm really on 110, I'm really on 110 this time. So I've got Chemeketa and Liberty Streets. This messes with me a lot. You'll notice the compass rose here indicates that north actually faces to the right of the page. So you're looking on this map is facing west. So if I'm looking at the northeast corner of Chemeketa and Liberty Streets, oops, I'm sorry, I was on center there. Chemeketa and Liberty Streets. I'm going to want to remember that I'm turned 90 degrees from what I normally think about as up or north on map. So here's North Liberty, here's Chemeketa, so the northeast corner is going to be this block right here. And again, this has changed quite a bit. That Congregational church that we had seen at the very northeast corner of the block is still there, although the building looks quite a bit different. But notice that those dwellings that were there on that first initial corner have been replaced by another church, the Church of Christ Scientist, in this kind of circular pattern. There still are some buildings there, and we may go back and forth between the two and see if there's some similarities in shapes to see which buildings may have survived from 1895 up through 1926-27. And we can go down here and see that there are some interesting other buildings here. We now have a brick fronted building here, which is labeled as a store, but also has a furniture store on the first and second floor and a business college on the third floor. It gives you, since it's again a commercial building, gives you some more information about the reinforced concrete posts that are on there. We notice in the alleyway we've got a crude underground oil tank for crude oil. Oops. This one I'm gonna zoom out a little bit here. You can manipulate using these buttons up here, or if you want to go back to the full view, you can hit the 1-to-1 to take you all the way back out. I don't have a scroller on my mouse here, which would allow you to zoom in and out freely. So I've got to utilize those buttons a little bit more. So let's scroll back down. Some other interesting things on the block. Oops, am I on the wrong block again? I'm back on Spell Center, sorry. It's real easy to get oriented a little bit differently. So we still have some more houses, dwellings in there in this block. Notice that this one says apps for apartments. We have some more stores made out of reinforced concrete on this area, attached to a dwelling house on the back. So the block is progressing. We no longer have a barn or a stable or corral. We instead have this A, which indicates automobile or garage. So again, showing the difference in transportation history and other things. It's fascinating to be able to look and see how this has happened. For maps after 1895, there were so many pages in the books that they actually split them into 2 volumes. Volume 1 contains everything north of State Street in Salem, and Volume 2 contains everything south of State Street in Salem. So keep that in mind when you are looking for different properties on either of these options. Also keep in mind that Volume 1 is published to 1926 and Volume 2 is published to 1927. Also, just a quick note about the numbering that you see around the edges of the page itself. It should be noted that in the early 20th century, the city of Salem actually changed their address numbering system. So keep in mind, if you're looking at anything, any maps on this site from 1895 and backwards, the address numbers are not going to match up to the current day's addresses as they stand today. The building might not even be in the same block. That's how drastic the address change was. This block sure has changed. What else may you be able to find out about it? Happy researching!